Well, Oregon's got a new safety. His name is Tysheem Johnson. What do we need from the Ole Miss transfer? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show if you haven't already. Thank you to everybody who has. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. We got my man Rian Winter at SportsChat503 on Twitter and YouTube in the house, the wily Oregon sports talk veteran who I'm just trying to be like a little bit more every single day. That's why I've had to up my swag game here in the background because of you, Ryan. Because
you're on point, bro.
We're getting there, but we're
Pillow
still
King.
Yes, that is indeed me right now, Pillow King. Let's talk about this addition, who I discussed earlier this week as a possibility on this show. Tysheem Johnson comes to Oregon from Ole Miss. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. He was one of or the leading tackler on Ole Miss's defense this year. He would have been the leading tackler on Oregon's team this season. There are a number of different ways he could potentially fit into the Oregon secondary here. But what did you make of this transfer portal addition that won't become official, of course, till the portal reopens, but we know he's going to be a Duck?
Sure. Yeah, no, I love it, man. I think I'm from the school that defense wins championships. Anytime Oregon has a good defense, they're good. And, you know what you got on offense. Hopefully your offensive coordinator next year does, good things like we saw last year, but having defensive players that are proven, pretty sweet. I mean, look what Gonzo did. That's a huge addition. I mean, and people were, when we were talking about that in the summertime, it was like, well, all right, where do we slot him? It's like, one. I mean, guy, they say he's going to be top 10 or something in the,
he'll probably go, I think he'll go top 20. I think he'll go in the 10 to 20 range is probably where I think he'd go.
Right. I mean, and I'm no expert on the NFL draft. That's probably my least bit of expertise. Golly, just go over to Mel, those guys. Todd. Easily one of my favorite impersonations of all time. Just him saying Todd.
Oh, Caliendo.
So good.
Bro, Caliendo is a top-tier impressionist.
Genius.
Top tier.
Anyway. Oh, dude. I'm just stoked. I like the idea that everybody talks about this. These are the regular talking points. SEC defense. You got to bring the studs from the SEC. Dan Lanning is going to bring all these guys. Hey, bro, I'll take it because we know that these guys, we in the West Coast are privy to fast, speedy, has been for years. Wide receivers, running backs, the big quarterback with the big arm. All that California stuff is great. But what you really need to be successful is you need that big D-line. You need that offensive line, maybe call it whatever you want to call from whatever region of the world. But I'm telling you, these cornerbacks and safeties, you need rangy, serious players. It's kind of in the basketball realm where if you compare it to basketball, you can find a point guard anywhere. The 6-foot guy with some handles and can shoot the ball and get the ball, that's fine. Rare to find centers, but they're out there. But the guys that are actually really hard to find are the guys that are 6'7", that are amazing athletes that can jump and defend and wing and shoot the ball, do everything. And they're bigger than everybody and they're faster than everybody. Those are the guys that are hard to find. And that's the guys who are going to play safety for you. Those are the guys who are usually playing DB for you. They say that the DB is basically the wide receiver that can't catch the ball as well. No. The DB is a guy who needs to do a lot of different things. Now these guys have to come up and stuff the run. I mean, primetime, perfect example. Like everybody loves Prime because of course now he's come to the Pac-12. Everybody loves this guy.
Well,
this
just to be clear, Ryan, everybody does not love Prime. Everybody knows of Prime. Not everybody loves Prime.
Facts. Everybody, when I say everybody, I mean like the national media.
Right. Okay.
Is loving on Prime. Right. He in my generation's like the best DB. Right. That guy didn't tackle. Deion Sanders did not want to tackle. He did not want to break off his receiver and go light some dude up on the sideline. That was not his game. His game was find you, pick your pocket, go and chase. You can't catch the guy. I love what Gonzo brought to the table. A guy who's willing to tackle. This team needs tackling. We talked about it over and over and over last year. The issues were in the yards after catch. The issues were in yards after contact. I mean, this defense could not wrap up early. So you need guys like this. And when you watch the SEC, that's one thing that I see that's different there. It's not just like these guys are huge and these guys have the bodies. No, they are formed tacklers. They get these guys to the ground quickly. So when I watch the film, obviously with the DB, you're looking at just like speed and size and strength and length and all that sort of stuff. But I see a guy who's willing to hit. And that's what I like to see on defense. A guy who's willing to get his head in there and get some contact.
Yeah, and Bennett Williams, for the shortcomings that he showed at times in 2022, also had a lot of strengths, and many of those came in the tackling front. He was one of the most sure tacklers on the team, I think, after Christian Gonzalez. And I think you add Evan Williams, you add Tysheem Johnson, and you hope guys like Triquez Bridges, who I think is a pretty solid tackler at the corner position, can take another step forward. But I think when you're looking at the question that I posed at the beginning here of the show, what do we need from him? I think you need him to be a playmaker. Because there were think about Oregon's defense. How many games can you remember a safety making a big time play? I can think of one in particular. It was, the Utah game where we allowed the fewest points against a Power 5
best
team.
Defensive game we've seen in years.
It was sensational because when you don't have it, it was all the more impressive because the offense was limited because Bo Nix was so limited. Like the defense almost single-handedly won that game. They only allowed 10 points to Utah, the Pac-12 champions. Like
who was rolling?
Yeah, and they were rolling at the time. They were playing really good football, and then they were a really good football team, and you held them to 10 points because you had playmakers. You had big plays being made, and I felt like, Brian Addison had a couple nice interceptions. One of them was a terrible decision by Jack Plummer. One of them was kind of a forced desperation heave from Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But I thought Addison actually showed some really nice moments over the course of the 2022 season. And I think you look at Evan Williams and now Tysheem Johnson, and I think it's hard to say that Jamal Hill and Steve Stevens, who are coming back, either are going to be locked into a big-time playing role now that Johnson and Williams have been added.
Well, again, I don't know where everybody fits on that thing when it comes to safeties and DBs and all that sort of stuff, but I do know that for sure the safety role was one that we were looking at, right? We were looking at how do you replace a guy like Bennett? Oh, his brother's available. Okay, replace there. But that might not be the same role, right? I agree. I think that Steve coming back is a big deal. I think he did get a lot better over his time. He got a lot of consistent playing time this year after his injuries. But, Brian Addison, I thought, added a lot to that room. And just savvy, hit playmaking ability, his height alone, 6'5". One of those guys that I just was really impressed with. So Jamal Hill, I still think is a good player, great playmaker at times, but can kind of fade into the shadow a little bit sometimes. And got caught sometimes in weird rotations as well, where he didn't get on the field as much. So, the defensive back group is a pretty big group right now. There's a lot of guys there. And, and so I don't know exactly what happens there. Oftentimes what happens is you try to maybe move guys around a little bit in there. And maybe one guy is going to find himself, maybe got a little bit more heavy in the weight room or something. They want to move him to a different position or whatever the case may be. But I do agree. I think Triquez had some issues last year, picking on him last year. I think he got better. I think Dante Manning had shown up and done what he needed to do. I don't know if maybe live up to expectations is the right way to say that because he came in with so much hype. But, there's guys that are coming here, and these guys are ready to go. So I'd love to see the young guys, the Jaleels. We've talked about that. Trajan Williams from Portland. There's going to be a lot of guys in that defensive back room. I don't know exactly what you're going to get, but the safety room is just fascinating to me. Plus, you have a new coach.
Yeah.
So it's like you add all this kind of stuff with it, and it's going to be a pretty fun situation. I just love the fact that they're stacking the defense. And I do think that, I try to be as positive as possible, but I do think that the defense was an issue this year, and it was last year. And we know it because you can look at the numbers. Just the numbers say it alone, but you can't go all just on that. Well, they lost the Vive game because they couldn't stop the run. They lost the Washington game because they couldn't stop the pass. They lost a variety of other issues in the year when it came to the score. They were up early. They would have to come back. The other team would come. The defense let them down, and in a variety of ways. And they had great players on those defenses. So it's not like they weren't like lack of better talent or whatever. So oftentimes, maybe, you bring the transfer portal in, you switch it up a little bit, you add more competition, which is always a good thing, add some little more pressure to certain rooms, and maybe you might get something really great out of it. But I just look at the Christian Gonzalez thing last year as like, I didn't really know much about him. Before
and then he was
move,
very clearly Oregon's best secondary player.
Far.
Wasn't close.
And I was like, more of that. I mean, there's kind of this idea of like the transfer portal for some people who like stay locked in. Speaking of locked on, into that mindset, they just haven't changed the mindset. Certain things has made me change that mindset. I wasn't super pro about it when it first jumped in, when I was like, oh, anybody can go anywhere, anytime. I don't know if that's great. And then I've slowly been like, well, hey,
there are advantages and there are disadvantages to it. Yeah, I think it's always a lot of give and take. You look at guys like Maliki Madaval and be like, I wanted to keep him, but then you look at all the guys they're bringing in, and Gonzo's a good example of that. Plenty more to get to with Ryan, but first we talk about FanDuel, as we have all week, because they are our new sports betting partner here at Locked On. They're the number one sports book in America, and if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can find everything to fulfill your gambling needs. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So we know what we're looking for from Tysheem Johnson. We need a playmaker there, and I wanted your thoughts on something else, Ryan, and that was the schedule release for the Ducks, because I find it to be as favorable as it could be given the teams that we have to play and the matchups that we have. And, you play this team at home, then you play this team on the road and whatnot, and there are some really tough games on this schedule. But my biggest takeaway was, look, it's not an easy schedule. The non-conference is definitely a step below last year, which I think is a good thing, but it's still, I think, solid enough with a road Texas Tech game to be legitimate, to where no one will look at it and say, oh, it's 3-0 and who'd you play? You just played all these guards, right? No one's going to be saying that, but you have to go at Washington. You have to go at Utah. You got to play the Beavs and USC at home. But I think the biggest thing, Ryan, those are probably your four toughest games, and they never come in order like they did at the end of 2022, where you had Washington and then Utah and then Oregon State. And I don't think there's such a thing as a break in the Pac-12 anymore with, Colorado adding Coach Prime, and they're going to be a much more talented group. But you at least don't have two gauntlet games where Oregon could be an underdog back-to-back in 2023.
No, and you get Colorado first. So,
right.
I mean, that's got to work in your favor, too. I love this schedule. And I love that USC is complaining about it. It just makes me even happier. I think, to me, this schedule is perfect because you're right. Nothing's back-to-back. We talked about this all summer last year. That was a gauntlet at the end of the year. You knew something bad was going to happen. Turned out two bad things happened. I mean, anyway, this is one of those things where I love this matchup. I like where it's at. I love the bye before Washington, and Washington gets it, so they can't complain. We know that. That's been a recurring theme, right? Oh, we got the bye, but they didn't, and how much of a disadvantage, whatever. Now it's even, all right? And it goes up there to Seattle. I mean, that's going to be an absolutely outstanding game. And, I do like that they brought Washington up closer. It was weird last year when they put it deeper. I'm a guy I've seen these scheduled for so long. I get kind of accustomed to it at a certain level. We used to always do the back-to-back Washington State thing. That was kind of like a natural thing. And it was usually always in October. To have Washington in November felt weird last year. So I like that that's back up kind of where it normally should be. The at Utah game is going to be absolutely insane. I'm debating on whether I want to go to Utah or to Arizona State. Utah is because it's going to be the better game. Arizona State is just because of the golf. But And I might get to see your doppelganger and your buddy Kenny Dillingham down there and give him a shout out. Hey, people tell me I look like people all the time. It's not flattering. At least the guy they said you look like is a good-looking guy. They're like, hey, you look like that giant fat this guy. I know. Is that me? Oh, I didn't know. Every guy, I don't even know the people who they say I look like. And every time they're like, hey, you look like that guy in that one show. I'm like, oh, this guy is 400 pounds. Yeah, Dom DeLuise? Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks. If
you're getting the comparison to Kenny Dillingham, there are worse things in the world. But if you're getting the comparison to John Goodman, you might need to reassess a dietary plan.
Right. They used to always tell me these guys. I can't even remember these guys off the top of my head right now. But they were always these big dudes. Like this one guy was he was like a film guy. He always wore like a hockey thing, and they were like, "You look just like this guy. He has got the beard too." And I was like, "That guy's huge. This guy couldn't catch a ball if you threw it to him. Come on, people." Anyway, so my bad. The Arizona State game I think is gonna be awesome. I love that down there. It's scary to some people. I get it, but that's kind of cliche. I feel like at this point, I think that's going to be a great game. I think they're going to be better than they have been or whatever. But who knows what happens at the end of the year. But going down there the week before the Oregon State game, to me, sounds choice because it's obviously be colder weather up here. Go down there, get some golf in there before that game. Why would I not want to go there?
I can't tell you to not do that. I got to say.
I mean, exactly. But
I'm wearing a golf shirt right now.
Please. I mean, we literally just before we hit record, we're talking passionate golf, almost more than we're talking the passion of right now in the Ducks. I mean, just good. But I love at Utah. I think at Utah is going to be a game that it's the raucous environment. It's exactly what you want. Get on the bus, get on the plane, business trip, go out there, get the job done. You proved you could do it last year. Have a healthy quarterback. They've got their returning quarterback. We've got already. This could be prime for a game day situation or something else. I mean, this could be a humongous situation.
I think I would pump the brakes on the game day situation because though Utah was very good this year and I anticipate them being good, and I think no matter what, it's going to be a challenging game. Their schedule is so brutal. I was talking about it with my guy JT Wistersill of Locked On Utes on Locked On Pac-12 the other day. You can go check it out for the full breakdown there. Their first 5 games are Florida, at Baylor, Weber State, UCLA, and at Oregon State.
Brutal. I mean they have to have one of the toughest non-conference in the country.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Florida and at Baylor, you just got no. And they only have one layup, and that's Weber State, and that's a good FCS team. But right. They'll be fine. But
the only hope you could have is like how you look at how bad Florida look against Oregon State. Obviously, that's not going to be the same team that will roll out next year to start the year, but they got him at Rice-Eccles. So at least you had a good game. They probably should have won in the Swamp last year, and then you bring them back up here to Utah. It's going to be a raucous environment. I could see them winning that game. I can also see them winning at Baylor. I hope to God they do. I mean. We need everybody in the Pac-12 to be winning out here, but I love the Texas Tech matchup for the Ducks going to Lubbock.
I think like it too.
Just good enough. It's also
not Georgia. It's
enough,
not.
Right?
Let's be honest. That's what we're all thinking about it. It's not Georgia.
No. But it's also, as a fan, I'm not inspired to go to Lubbock. I'm thinking of that weekend. I'm probably going to be at the beach playing some golf, watching that game on the Saturday. I'm not like as diehard to go to Lubbock as I was. I was really excited to go to Atlanta, even though I knew we were going to lose that game.
Let me throw this at you, Ryan. I have been to Lubbock before. I have played the Texas Tech golf course that they have down there, the college course. Outstanding. It's outstanding. I'm just telling you, might be worth the trip. But
it might be a little tough to get to for me. I'm going to make every choice. I'm going to make every excuse I can on that one. But yeah, anyway, I like that. I like the fact that, you've got a Big 12 matchup. I love the fact that you have there on the road. I think those are all great things. It's all positive. And then Hawaii, I think, is going to be a fun matchup too. I always like playing Hawaii. Clem went there. Tuioti went there. You've got guys who alumni on the squad, coaching staff. And I just love the fact that you have this relationship with Hawaii where you're going to go over there. I'm going to go over to that game next year. If we can keep that on the schedule, that's going to be absolutely all timer in 24 over in Hawaii. But to open the year, 0 week if they hold on to it. But, then you get them coming back at outset. I think that's a pretty good matchup. I kind of think, playing a team like Hawaii or UNLV or Fresno State or, any of those kind of teams, on that third game is really nice because it gets you just a little bit of that tune-up before you jump into your
conference games.
schedule.
Yep. Totally agree. One thing we can all agree on as it pertains to Oregon's 2023 schedule, though, is that no matter who we're playing, the special teams outside of Camden Lewis as a field goal kicker need to improve. I think we all agree on that front. And with that in mind, I bring up a question from ya boy Boomer on YouTube. All right, whatever floats your boat, man.
Is he a Sooner guy? Boomer Sooner?
I don't know, but I think he's more going generational, kind of a jab
Boomer.
there and whatnot.
He's your boy Boomer. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's
like
what
he's
shizzle. Yeah, that's exactly right. He asks, question, overall thoughts on the special teams room, new punter, long snapper coming in. So I'll get to the punter in a moment. On the long snapper front, and this is just how dedicated we are to football, talking about the long snapper.
Dude,
I couldn't tell. Here's the thing, Ryan. I couldn't tell you his name right now because I didn't look it up. I couldn't tell you the previous long snapper's name, and I hope that I never have to learn his name, because if I do, then something has gone horribly wrong. But on the punter front, it's an underrated part of helping build a great defense. If the opposing team is constantly starting at the 35, 40-yard line or out, and you never pin them deep, you're putting your backs up against the wall there a little bit and demanding a lot. I think that Luke Dune or Dunn, the Australian kid who's coming in, we'll see who ends up actually being the punter, but I don't know if Oregon special teams, whether that's punting, returns, kickoffs, kick returns, I don't know, aside from Andrew Boyle's touchback percentage, that it could be much worse than it was this year.
Yeah, the special teams was not great. And we actually thought going into the year that the special teams was going to be strong. Coach Lorig was like hyping this up. This is why I came here. They were doing all the media guys early on in the year. They were only given the time to go to practice. The only time they got to see was special teams. So it was like, hey, I got 15 minutes to see practice. How was it? It's great. Watch the long snappers and the punters. Execution looks awesome. But yeah, Karsten Battles, shout out, long snapper. In the stadium, that's one of the names you hear all the time because Don Essig does such a good job of always announcing the long snapper, with everything.
Karsten Battles into snap. Tom Snee back to punt for the Ducks.
And on the TV broadcast, I don't know if it really shows up as much, but
no, it does not.
I mean, it's just one of those things. And shout out to Don. I'm doing PA announcing now, and I'm giving my best Don impersonation.
Dude,
out there,
Essig is the man.
Dude, he's so good. But special teams is a huge deal. I always go back to Bellotti. Bellotti always said special teams be special, and he always had the starters had to play on a special team. And everybody who was a starter had to play on a special teams. And they got real players out there. I mean, Jonathan Stewart was a punt returner, kick returner type guy. I mean, you always had guys out there that were absolute studs playing that thing. DeAnthony Thomas, very famously, was the gunner on the punt team, right? And he was like,
yeah.
Hey.
Helped ice that Rose Bowl game. If they get a return there, maybe they get more. You never know what happens.
Big time.
But, they put him in that situation. Yep.
That's why you put him. And he's a defensive guy. He wants to hit anyway. So, it's one of those things where I think, it's often overlooked, but it is technically a third of the game. And, when you look at this thing, offensive team, everybody's focused on the quarterback. Defensive team, everybody's focused on maybe the linebacker, some defensive end now, popular. But, man, your punter makes a humongous difference for this team. And your kicker usually is your leading scorer on every team. These guys matter, a ton. You need to flip the field. I mean, God almighty, I don't even really want to think too much about that Oregon State game. But that damn punt is going to haunt me. It was just the Rose Bowl one where they left the loaf of bread on the ground and Brady picked it up and took it in the end zone. I was like, no, man, I was literally melting.
Yeah, pain, straight pain.
And I'm in the stadium and I'm in this with all the Duck fans and I'm like, how is this happening? Because that's a play you just expect to work. You just expect to make it happen. It's like you and I playing golf and you see this beautiful shot. You've already seen it. You haven't even hit the shot. Visualization, people. And then all of a sudden you hit it and you're like, wait a minute, where did it go? It didn't go the place I thought I wanted it to.
Yeah.
That happens for kickers. That happens for punters. And, it's a damn shame. But, I do think that you're going to have a better success rate in the future. I think this year was a little shaky when it came to maybe who they had to work with, who they were bringing in. Adam Berry had some plays there as well. And there was a bunch of different stuff kind of going on there. I do think it might get better. I like the Australian punter. I have no problem with that. I like Tom. I thought he did a good job, but I also thought that when he left the team, there was a little bit of a void there that you knew going into it. Maybe you're not in the right exact spot as you thought you were. And I do think Tom did a pretty good job of putting them in pretty good positions, but I kind of like the Australian punter. I like this idea that
he'll have a chance to play, by the way.
He'll have a chance to play.
There's no way they're locked into a punter right now.
For sure. But I also like that there's this idea that there's some sort of a separate place in the world where they're training these punters. And there's this special training ground that only these footy guys, rugby guys they're getting this thing that's different than what everybody else is doing. Why not? And so I love punting myself. I grew up playing soccer. I could kick the hell out of a soccer ball. I loved to punt. I was never the starting punter on my teams, but I was always the backup. And punting is just a huge part of the game. It is one of the reasons why they call it football. And, you have a situation where you need to flip the field. They're the most important player on the field at that point. And I think people overlook special teams all the time. In the NFL, you can't anymore because they pushed that PAT back. We saw that with the Cowboys. The guy missed 4 in a row.
Yeah, Brett Maher got the yips.
I mean, weird. So, these guys, you overlook them and then it's a problem. So I think that you have to shore up the special teams. If you want to win games next year, you knew that it cost you yardage, if not points, in that Oregon State game. That one play cost you big time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just gifted the Beavs 7 points. You just handed it to them on
the goal line?
First and goal on the 2-yard line. That's going to be a touchdown.
For a touchdown
90 plus percent of the time. Let's wrap really quickly, Ryan, before we get too miserable on this particular topic, talking about Oregon basketball.
I'm not even.
But real quick on Oregon basketball. We're recording this before the Colorado game on Thursday, but guess what? The outcome of that game cannot change my opinion of the men's basketball team at this point in time. There is nothing. They could win by 30, they could lose by 30. I would feel the same about them, and that's they could play with anybody and they could lose to anybody. I've never seen a team have this big a difference between its peaks and its valleys, Ryan. You can beat Arizona, end up winning by 20, and then lose to just a dreadful team. What's going on right now?
Horrible. And I try to go to as many of these as possible. I usually go to all the weekend games at Eugene. So I've had season tickets for years for men's and women's basketball. And this year I didn't. I just bought individual tickets, but I'm going to Vegas for the tournament. I love basketball.
I'm a huge fan.
It is huge. I mean, I think college football is my favorite sport, but basketball as a kid, for my whole life, I've just adored the sport.
Number 2.
Coached it. I've played it. Now I'm doing announcing for it. I'm fully immersed. And I love the Ducks, absolutely dearly. But this team pisses me off. Oh my God. This team just drives me crazy. So the
makes you want to pull out what little hair you've got left up there.
I mean, I've got some hair over here. I'm not fully bald. I did go about a year with it with bald spot. I didn't even know I had it. Where I had so much. My wife's like, you're getting bald back here? I was like, no, I didn't. Anyway, no, this is a team that is entirely frustrating. Absolutely blown by Colorado up there and turn around, beat Utah, which was pretty much expected. But the Arizona State loss was so bad. And I really like Bobby Hurley, and I kind of don't like Bobby Hurley at the same time. I'm like both. But I really respect the hell out of him and that program. And I was like, oh, no. This team's going to win the freaking whole Pac-12 champ. That freshman was on fire. They couldn't miss. It was just out of control. And then I'm like, I'm going to the Arizona game. I think we were tweeting each other. I was like, I'm going to you were like, good luck.
Yeah. And then they won.
And it was unbelievable. I mean, they had the lead at half, And then Arizona came right back, hit those 2 threes, tied it up right there. And then Oregon went on like a 20-point sprint. I mean, dude, they went crazy in that game, and it was awesome. They were getting dunks, they were getting stops, they were getting threes. And then you go like, this is great. Go down to Cal, shouldn't be a problem. Okay, the Bay Area is always tough to win for whatever reason.
Okay, but it's not. It's not
this year. No,
those teams are
just bad. It's always been a problem because you had Mike Montgomery down there for years at Stanford. Then he was over at Cal. You had tons of great players at Stanford. You had tons of good players at Cal.
The other thing too is they play that Thursday game against Cal, and they look how they're supposed to. They routed them. They blew them out, and you're like, okay, now you understand how you need to play. And then you go play an almost equally as bad Stanford team 2 days later, and you can't put it in a basket.
I agree. But it's
honestly mind-boggling for the amount of talent they have.
It is. And I'm not trying to make excuses, but on a basketball team, I truly think that Cal is much worse than Stanford talent-wise.
A little bit, yeah.
They just have Stanford hasn't gotten the bounce or whatever. They've had injuries, whatever. Stanford's tall, and they put a lot of pressure on. Or they didn't need to be that athletic. They had height. And so and Oregon let it get to them mentally. I mean, that last possession where Richardson gave up those 2 threes that were wide open, he didn't shoot the ball because the guy in front of him was like a 6'10" guy. They have like the 3rd or 4th biggest team in the country, Stanford does. They roll out to tall dudes, and that just mentally messes with these, especially when they're trying to get in the paint or they get the shot up. They got blocked a couple times. And anyway, horrible. This week, I would not be surprised at all if they beat Colorado, and I'm going to the Utah game. The Utah games we're going to celebrate.
I bet you they split.
Team.
Ryan,
and then they're going to lose to Utah at home. And the football team's going to be there. Everybody's going to be, the recruits are going to be there on Saturday with all the, I could literally see them. And how frustrating is this?
We're gonna go insane if we go any longer on this.
So
but
anyway,
I think we're echoing.
Rebuild. I do think they can rebuild. I do think they can have a good run in the tournament. I'm hoping.
They're capable of it.
That's the better word.
But I just don't. I just haven't seen anything regarding consistency that would lead me to believe they could string games together. They haven't strung games together literally all season long. And unfortunately, Ryan, I think how we're feeling right now talking about it is reflective of every Oregon basketball fan listening to or watching this
100%.
Right now. I mean, there's no other way to feel about it. And it's maddening, but we'll continue to support him because you never know. Maybe Dana's got a real rabbit to pull out of the hat. I don't have a lot of faith, but I've always got faith in my man Rian Winter to deliver entertaining content here on the show. Good to talk to you as always, my guy.
Thank you so much, man. Go Ducks.
Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great weekend. And as Ryan said, go Ducks.